They raised their glasses to my brother and called me the failure at my own graduation. But the envelope I'd just received contained something that would flip the entire table if you've ever been pushed aside. Listen closely because I'd prepared a plan they couldn't escape. Comment where you're listening from. We're about to reach the part where a useless daughter becomes the one signing the orders that change an entire family empire. My name is Lena Hartwell, and on the day my brother graduated with honors from Western Lake University, my parents decided to announce to everyone that I was the family disappointment. The Midwest sun blazed down on the stadium's metal bleachers. I sat in the back rows, watching Zach cross the stage in his crimson cap and gown, while our parents, Martin and Elise Hartwell, occupied the VIP section. Their smiles stretched wide for the cameras. Mine stayed frozen, practiced, hollow. The real performance came later, at Cobalt and Ash, the kind of restaurant where the wood gleams like honey and the waiters know not to interrupt power plays. My father stood, crystal flute catching the chandelier light. The room quieted. Fork tines stopped scraping porcelain. To Zach, Martin began, his voice carrying that CEO timbre he'd perfected over 40 years of building Hartwell modular systems into a $40 million empire. Today, we're not just celebrating his magna cum laude achievement. Elise and I are officially transferring 25% of the company's shares to him, along with full succession rights and the Riverton penthouse. Applause rippled through the private dining room. Zach's college friends whistled. Business associates nodded their approval. Then Martin's eyes found me. As for Lena, we've arranged a modest monthly allowance. It's time she learned to be realistic about her capabilities. Dreams are wonderful, but some of us need to accept our limitations. The laughter that followed wasn't cruel. It was worse. It was knowing, sympathetic, the kind reserved for the family member everyone pretends doesn't exist until holidays force acknowledgement. My fingers tightened on my water glass. The tremor started in my chest, that familiar cocktail of humiliation and rage I'd swallowed for 29 years. Around me, conversations resumed. Someone complimented the salmon. Zach's girlfriend kissed his cheek. That's when she approached. Margot Vale moved through the crowd like smoke-silver hair swept into a chignon, charcoal suit that whispered money with every step. She was the kind of lawyer whose hourly rate could fund a small startup. She stopped directly in front of me, blocking my parents' view. Ms. Hartwell. She didn't extend her hand. Instead, she placed a manila envelope on the tablecloth beside my untouched dessert. The wax seal bore an emblem I knew intimately because I'd designed it. The board meeting concluded at 4:30 p.m. Everything you requested is inside. My mother noticed her first. Excuse me, this is a private, I'm leaving. Vale's smile could have frozen Lake Michigan. Ms. Hartwell, the timeline we discussed begins now. You have approximately 10 minutes before the filing hits the system. She vanished as smoothly as she'd arrived. The envelope sat there, innocuous as a sleeping snake. My fingernail traced its edge. 3 years of preparation, compressed into documents that would detonate everything my parents had built and rebuild it correctly. Who was that? Martin demanded, already half standing. I picked up the envelope, felt its weight. Inside lay incorporation papers, loan assignments, safety violations, and one particularly damning OSHA report my parents didn't know existed yet. That, I said, standing slowly, was the beginning of a conversation we should have had years ago. The room's attention swiveled back to me. Good. They'd dismissed me in public. They could witness the reversal in public, too. Growing up in the Hartwell house meant understanding your place in the ecosystem. The Riverton mansion sprawled across 3 acres of manicured Michigan lakefront, all oak panels and floor-to-ceiling windows that turned sunset into performance art. The chlorine scent from the pool mixed with the leather of my father's study, where scale models of modular construction projects lined the shelves like trophies. Zach's trophies were literal baseball, lacrosse, academic decathlon. They gleamed from the formal living room's display case, each one polished weekly by the housekeeper. Mine existed in a cardboard box in the basement, if they existed at all. A participation certificate from middle school science fair. A crumpled report card with A's in spatial reasoning that my mother folded in half, disappointed by the C's in everything requiring sustained attention. Zach's the heir, my father would tell business partners over brandy. Lena's, finding herself. At 18, while Zach prepped for Northwestern, I enrolled in community college. The counselors suggested I test for learning differences. My parents suggested I lower my expectations. I did both. The diagnosis came back at 23 ADHD, inattentive type, plus auditory processing disorder. The psychologist seemed surprised I'd made it through high school. "But your spatial intelligence scores are exceptional," she'd said, sliding the results across her desk. "You see patterns and connections others miss. You just process them differently." Differently meant wrong in the Hartwell house. Differently meant watching Zach intern at the company while I worked night shifts at a warehouse, learning inventory systems because repetitive tasks gave my brain structure. Differently meant sitting through family dinners where my father explained construction logistics to Zach while my mind rebuilt the entire supply chain in 3 dimensions, seeing inefficiencies he'd never notice. 2 people saw what I could actually do. Dr. Miriam Ortega taught applied technology at the community college. She noticed I'd redesigned her entire lab layout on scratch paper during a lecture on industrial workflows. "You see it, don't you?" she'd asked after class. The way everything connects, the failure points before they happen. She became my first real mentor, taught me to document my ideas, to translate the 3D models in my head into proposals others could understand. The second was Gus Delaney, who ran a construction equipment yard where I'd taken a part-time job. 60 years old, built like the machinery he rented, with hands that could diagnose engine trouble by touch. He watched me prevent 3 near accidents in my first month, spotting danger patterns in worker movement that violated no official rules but created collision paths. "You got the site," he told me over coffee at 5 a.m., the yard lights cutting through morning fog. Some people read blueprints. You read the space between them. He taught me the reality of construction sites, not the boardroom version my father sold, but the ground truth. How workers developed blind spots. How safety protocols looked perfect on paper but created new hazards in practice. How a 2-second delay in hazard recognition could mean someone wouldn't go home. Those lessons crystallized the night I watched a crane operator nearly decapitate a ground worker because the warning lights blended into the sunset and the alarm bells got swallowed by generator noise. The worker lived barely. The site shut down for investigation. The report blamed human error, but I'd seen the real problem, played out in dimensional clarity in my mind. The safety systems assumed perfect conditions. They didn't account for the chaos of actual construction, the sensory overload, the fatigue, the way humans actually move through space. That's when I knew what I had to build. And more importantly, I knew my parents would never, ever let me build it under the Hartwell name. The idea hit me at 3:45 a.m. on a Tuesday, watching a near catastrophe unfold in slow motion at Gus's yard, a tired operator backing an excavator toward a spotter who'd stepped into the swing radius, focused on guiding a crane overhead. The static warning signs might as well have been invisible. The backup alarm blended into the cacophony of diesel engines and pneumatic tools. I yanked the emergency horn. Both men froze. The excavator's arm stopped 18 inches from the spotter's skull. "Jesus Christ," Gus breathed beside me. "How'd you see that coming?" I hadn't just seen it, I'd mapped it. In my mind, every piece of equipment projected its danger zone like a hologram, updating in real time as machines moved. The problem wasn't the workers. It was that they couldn't see what I saw. What if they could? I asked Gus. That question became North Star AR. The technology itself wasn't revolutionary computer vision, and augmented reality already existed. My innovation was making it construction-proof cheap cameras that could take a beating, software that translated movement patterns into danger probability, and most crucially, alerts that bypassed the overwhelmed visual and auditory channels. When a worker entered a danger zone, Their vest would pulse and their bone conduction earpiece would click distinct, unmistakable, impossible to ignore. Dr. Ortega helped me write the initial patent applications. Gus introduced me to contractors willing to test prototypes off the books. I incorporated as North Star Safety, LLC, using L, heart on all the paperwork, gender neutral, family connection neutral. The money came from unexpected places. Ferrystone Capital, a Michigan venture fund focused on industrial innovation, put in $350,000 after watching our field tests. Their partner, James Ferry, had lost a nephew in a preventable construction accident. "This isn't about ROI," he'd said, signing the term sheet. "But we'll make plenty of that too." The Riverton Workplace Safety Fund added another $100,000. They'd been hemorrhaging money on injury claims. Our pilot program cut incidents by 47% in 90 days. I kept 60% equity, not from greed, but from necessity. Control meant no one could water down the mission for profit. Safety was a right, not a luxury feature. "You know what your father charges for basic safety compliance?" Gus asked one evening, reviewing Hartwell's public contracts. 30% markup, minimum. "I know exactly what he charges," I replied, pulling up spreadsheets I'd been building for 2 years. "I also know his loan covenants." Gus whistled low. "You're not just building a better mousetrap. No, I'm building a better house, one that makes his obsolete." The first major test came with 3 city construction sites. Incidents dropped immediately. Insurance premiums followed 18% reduction for any contractor using North Star systems. Word spread through the Michigan construction network like wildfire. But I wasn't just building market share. I was documenting everything. Every prevented accident. Every insurance saving. Every worker who went home intact because they'd felt that vest pulse at the right moment. Building an undeniable case that safety technology wasn't optional anymore. It was obligatory. "Your dad's gonna find out eventually," Dr. Ortega warned, reviewing my latest expansion plans. "He'll find out when I want him to," I said, signing the contract for our 4th major deployment. "And by then, it'll be too late to stop it." She studied me over her reading glasses. "This isn't just about the company, is it?" "It's about standards," I replied. "His company has been setting them for 20 years. Bare minimum compliance marketed as excellence. Someone needs to show this industry what actual excellence looks like. And that someone happens to be his discarded daughter." I smiled, thinking of the loan documents I'd been quietly acquiring through shell companies. "Happened to be. Present tense is about to change." The numbers told a story my father would have killed to claim. 3 test sites, 47% incident reduction, 18% insurance savings. The North Star system had prevented 14 potentially fatal accidents in 6 months. The workers started calling the vest pulses angel taps, a warning from something watching over them. But the real victory came wrapped in financial documents that arrived at my apartment at 11:20 p.m. on a Thursday. "Lake and Third Bank," Margot Vale said over encrypted phone. "Your father's revolving credit facility. 40 million principal standard covenants, except for one interesting clause." I spread the papers across my kitchen table, parsing the legal language I'd taught myself to read. There it was, buried in Section 12.3.4, the Safety Covenant. 2 serious OSHA violations within any 12-month period triggered acceleration rights. The bank could call the entire loan or assign it to another creditor. "How many violations does Hartwell currently have?" I asked. "1. 7 months ago, a worker lost 2 fingers due to inadequate machine guarding. And if there were a second, then whoever holds this debt holds Martin Hartwell's throat." The loan was trading at 91 cents on the dollar in the secondary market banks, offloading risk in chunks. Through North Star Holdings SPV, a special purpose vehicle I'd created precisely for this moment, I bought 70% of the debt over 6 weeks. Small purchases, different brokers, nothing to trigger attention. The total cost, $25 million of borrowed money, secured against North Star's contracts and future receivables. The same week I secured the loan position, Briar Hollow opened bidding for the Oak Street Bridge rehabilitation. 8-figure contract, requiring advanced safety monitoring systems, including augmented reality hazard prevention. The specification might as well have had North Star's logo watermarked on it. Hartwell Modular Systems lost their first municipal bid in 12 years. Your father called me. James Ferry mentioned casually over coffee. Wanted to know who was behind North Star. Offered me $2 million for the information. What did you tell him? That innovative technology speaks for itself. He smiled. Then I hung up. The pieces were aligning. 3 major contractors had signed memorandums of understanding with North Star they'd terminate their maintenance contracts with Hartwell if the company didn't implement AR safety systems within 60 days. The construction world was small. Word traveled. Standards evolved. Dinosaurs died. But I needed one more thing, evidence of a second violation serious enough to trigger the loan covenant. It came from Tommy Paulson, a Hartwell site supervisor who'd been fired for insubordination. He'd refused to remove safety barriers to speed up a pour. Still got the photos, he told me at a diner outside Riverton, sliding his phone across the cracked Formica table. Date stamped, GPS tagged, shows them taking down the barriers after I left. Someone could have fallen 20 feet. Did anyone get hurt? Not yet. But OSHA doesn't need injuries for willful violations, just evidence of knowing endangerment. I transferred $10,000 to his account. For consulting services, there's another $20 when you file the complaint. This is about more than money for you, isn't it? It's about tomorrow being different from yesterday, I said. For every worker who assumes they have to accept unnecessary risk to keep their job. The graduation ceremony was in 3 days. The complaint would be filed the morning after OSHA fast-tracking given the severity. The loan assignment notification would hit Hartwell's legal department at 8 a.m., sharp, while my parents were still celebrating their Golden Boys achievement. I met with Vale one last time to review the takeover package. The offer is generous, she noted. 22% premium. They keep advisory roles. I'm not trying to destroy them, I said. I'm trying to fix what they built wrong. But first, they need to understand that their daughter, the failure, the one with limitations, now controls whether their company survives Monday. And you're certain they'll be at the graduation dinner. I laughed, short and sharp. They've reserved Cobalt and Ash's private room. 50 guests. Zach's triumph. Their vindication as parents. They wouldn't miss it for anything. Then we proceed as planned. Vale sealed the envelope. I'll see you at the restaurant. Operation Midnight Beam. I named it after the construction term for a support installed in darkness, discovered at dawn. Every detail had been orchestrated down to the minute. 3 major contractors received their final MOUs at 6 p.m. Friday, hours before the graduation dinner. Sterling Construction, Midwest Industrial, and Titan Builders together. They represented 60% of Hartwell's maintenance revenue. The terms were simple: implement North Star AR systems or lose the contracts. Hartwell had 60 days to comply or watch their client base evaporate. They'll never agree to use a competitor system. My CFO, David Park, said during our final strategy session. They will when they realize the competitor is family, I replied, signing the last authorization, and that the alternative is bankruptcy. The loan assignment notification was scheduled for Saturday morning, 8 a.m., sharp, automated through Vale's firm's document system. By the time my parents opened their emails after the graduation festivities, the debt transfer would be irreversible. North Star Holdings SPV would officially control 70% of Hartwell's $40 million credit facility. But the masterstroke was the timing of the OSHA inspection. Tommy Paulson's complaint had been filed with photographic evidence. I'd learned through carefully cultivated connections that an inspector would arrive at Hartwell's Riverside Plaza site Monday at 7 a.m. Before my father's usual 9 a.m. arrival, the violations were documented, willful, and would trigger immediate citation. 2 serious violations. Loan covenant breached, acceleration rights activated. I created a timeline, mapped on my wall like a construction schedule. Saturday, 2 p.m., graduation ceremony. Saturday, 6 p.m., dinner at Cobalt and Ash. Saturday, 8:15 p.m. Vale delivers envelope Saturday. 8:30 p.m. I reveal everything. Sunday, 8 a.m. Parents receive loan assignment notification. Monday, 7 a.m. OSHA inspection. Monday, noon. Loan acceleration notice Monday, 2 p.m. Buyout offer expires. You're giving them an out. Vale observed, reviewing the acquisition terms. Most hostile takeovers don't include golden parachutes. This isn't about destroying them, I said. It's about forcing evolution. They can adapt or dissolve, but either way, the company transforms. The final piece clicked into place Thursday night. Zach called me first time in 3 months. Lena, I need to tell you something. His voice carried exhaustion. Mom and Dad are planning something at the graduation dinner. They've been drafting documents. I saw the penthouse transfer deed. I know. Silence. Then, you know. I've known for weeks. They're making you the heir apparent, publicly, officially. I don't want it. The words rushed out. I've been accepted to Johns Hopkins for biomedical engineering, PhD program, full funding, but Dad says what Dad always says, that Hartwell's build things, that the company is our legacy. It's his legacy, not mine. A pause. Not yours either, apparently? No. I agreed. Mine is something different. Lena, what are you planning? I looked at the wall timeline, at 3 years of preparation converging on a single evening. I'm planning to give you your freedom, and maybe find mine in the process. Should I be worried? No. Just be ready to make a choice when the moment comes. Your real choice, not theirs. After we hung up, I made one final call to James Ferry. The bridge contract came through, he confirmed. North Star's system is now mandatory for all Briar Hollow municipal projects. The announcement goes live Monday morning. Market response. 3 other cities are drafting similar requirements. Your father's been calling everyone, trying to figure out who's behind what he calls this AR nonsense. I smiled, thinking of his face when he learned the answer. 72 hours until he knows? You sure you want to do it publicly? They made me a failure publicly, repeatedly, at every family gathering, every company event, every opportunity to introduce their children. This is Zach, our future, and Lena exists. Revenge is a dish best served cold. This isn't revenge, I corrected. It's a comprehensive safety system upgrade. The fact that it requires new management is just operational necessity. The chandelier at Cobalt and Ash threw diamonds of light across the private dining room. 50 faces turned toward my father as he rose, champagne flute catching the glow. The microphone squealed briefly feedback that made me think of construction alarms nobody hears. Ladies and gentlemen, Martin began, his voice filling the space with practiced authority. Today, we celebrate not just Zach's magna cum laude achievement, but the future of Hartwell Modular Systems. I watched from my assigned seat at the periphery table, 3, behind a decorative pillar. Strategic invisibility. Effective immediately. We're transferring 25% of company shares to Zachary, along with full succession rights. He'll also receive the Riverton penthouse and, as a small graduation gift, the new Tesla Model S in the parking lot. Applause erupted. Someone whistled. Zach's face had gone pale, his girlfriend squeezing his hand under the table. As for our daughter Lena, my father continued, and I saw several heads turn, searching for me. We've arranged a modest monthly stipend. It's time she learned to be realistic about her capabilities. Not everyone is meant to lead. Some are meant to find their own way. The laughter rippled sympathetic, knowing, the kind reserved for family disappointments. I stood. The movement drew attention. Conversations stuttered to a halt as I walked toward the main table, heels clicking against hardwood with metronomic precision. Congratulations, Zach, I said, voice carrying without the microphone. You deserve to celebrate today. My mother's smile went rigid. Lena, we're in the middle of... Do you know what North Star is? I asked my father directly. He frowned, clearly thrown off script. Some overpriced AR system. A fad. Construction doesn't need toys. Interesting assessment. I set the manila envelope on the table between the champagne bottles and flower arrangements. Since North Star just won the Oak Street Bridge contract, the one Hartwell lost, silence crystallized around us. My father's jaw tightened the tell that preceded his explosions. I'm Lena Hartwell, I said, addressing the room now. For those who don't know me, I'm the other offspring, the one with limitations, the one who needs to be realistic. I opened the envelope with deliberate slowness. I'm also the founder and CEO of North Star Safety. The revelation rippled outward. I saw Tom Morrison from Sterling Construction straighten in his chair he'd signed our MOU 6 hours ago. Sandra Kemp from the City Planning Commission was typing rapidly on her phone, probably Googling the company she'd been praising for weeks without knowing who ran it. That's impossible, my mother said. You don't have the capital. Ferrystone Capital and the Riverton Safety Fund disagreed. I pulled out the first document. But that's not the interesting part. This is the assignment notice for Hartwell's revolving credit facility with Lake and Third Bank. As of 8 a.m. this morning, North Star Holdings SPV controls 70% of your $40 million loan. My father snatched the paper. His face went from red to white as he read. The loan has a safety covenant, I continued, pulling out the second document. 2 serious OSHA violations in 12 months triggers acceleration rights. You had one 7 months ago. Tomorrow morning, an inspector will discover the second at your Riverside Plaza site. The barriers your supervisor removed on Tuesday, after firing Tommy Paulson for refusing to create unsafe conditions. You set us up, Martin snarled. No, I documented reality. You created the violations. I just made sure they'd be recorded. Zach stood suddenly. Mom, Dad, I need to say something. Not now, Elise hissed. Yes, now. His voice cracked but held. I don't want the company. I've been accepted to Hopkins for biomedical engineering, PhD program. That's my actual future. The room held its breath. I pulled out the final document. This is a buyout offer, I said. North Star acquires Hartwell, 22% premium over current valuation. You retain advisory positions? No voting rights. All existing employees keep their jobs with better safety standards. The alternative is loan acceleration on Monday, asset seizure by Tuesday, and bankruptcy by Friday. You're destroying your family, my mother said, voice trembling. No, I'm setting new standards. Safety isn't an expense to minimize, it's a right. And companies that don't understand that shouldn't be building anything. I looked at the contractors present. Sterling, Midwest Industrial, and Titan have 60 days to implement North Star systems or lose their Hartwell maintenance contracts. Though, technically, they'll be North Star contracts by then. The room erupted in side conversations. Martin stood frozen, still staring at the documents. Elise had tears in her eyes, rage or grief. I couldn't tell. The OSHA citation arrived Monday at 9:17 a.m., exactly as scheduled. Willful violation, immediate remediation required, $50,000 fine. The second strike in 7 months. The loan covenant shattered like safety glass under pressure. My father's lawyers called Vail within the hour. The acceleration notice had already been filed 30 days to pay $40 million or face asset seizure. The SPV I controlled held all the cards, and everyone at the table knew it. Your terms, Martin said when we met in Vail's conference room Tuesday afternoon. His voice had aged a decade in 3 days. Explain them again. I slid the acquisition agreement across the mahogany table. North Star absorbs Hartwell as a wholly owned subsidiary. You and Elise transition to advisory roles, 3-year contracts, $600,000 annually each. No operational authority. All current employees retain their positions with 5% raise minimum. Safety systems upgrade to North Star standards within 6 months. And if we refuse, then I call the loan. Today, the company goes into receivership, assets get auctioned, and 300 employees lose their jobs before Friday. I met his eyes steadily. But that's not what I want. What do you want? Elise asked. Her perfect composure cracked. To humiliate us, you've done that. I want every construction worker in Michigan to go home intact. I want safety innovation to be the standard, not the exception. And I want the Hartwell name to mean something beyond minimum compliance and maximum profit. You're destroying what we built, Martin said. I'm evolving it, the same way you evolved Grandpa's small concrete business into modular construction. Markets change, standards rise, adapt or dissolve. Zach spoke from his seat beside them. She's right, Dad. The industry's been moving this direction for years. You just refused to see it. Don't lecture me about my industry. It's not yours anymore, Zach interrupted. That's the point. Either you sign and stay part of the transformation, or you don't and watch it happen anyway. The room went silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights. I watched my father's hands, the same ones that had signed my report cards with disappointment, that had gestured dismissively whenever my name came up at board meetings. Now they trembled slightly as he reached for the pen. The employees, he said quietly. You'll protect them. Every single one. They're not responsible for management's decisions. He signed. The ink gleamed wet and final. Elise signed next, her signature sharp with suppressed fury. There's one more thing, I said, pulling out an additional document. Zach's shares transfer back to the company treasury. He's free to pursue Hopkins without any ownership obligations. My brother's eyes widened. Lena, you were never supposed to carry this weight, I said. Go build medical devices. Save lives your way. The lawyers collected the papers. Notaries witnessed. Within an hour, Hartwell Modular Systems became a division of North Star Safety, Inc. You planned this for years, my mother said as we gathered our things. Every detail. 3 years, 4 months, and 16 days. I confirmed. Since the night I watched a man almost die because your safety systems valued efficiency over effectiveness, we followed every regulation. Regulations are the floor, not the ceiling. But you wouldn't understand that. You never saw past the profit margins to the people depending on those systems. Martin stood to leave, then paused at the door. The AR technology. You developed it. With help. Turns out the limited daughter has exceptional spatial processing abilities. I see danger patterns before they manifest. The only limitation was your inability to recognize potential that didn't match your definition. He left without responding. Elise followed, but Zach lingered. Thank you, he said simply. For the freedom. For all of it. You would have done the same for me. No, he said honestly. I wouldn't have had the courage, or the vision. I was the heir apparent. But you were always the actual leader. They just couldn't see it. After he left, Vale and I sat in the empty conference room. Outside, Lake Michigan stretched gray under afternoon clouds. Hostile takeovers usually end with lawsuits, she observed. They won't sue. The loan assignment was legal, the safety violations real, the buyout generous. More importantly, suing would mean publicly admitting they were outmaneuvered by the failure daughter. Their egos won't survive that. And now we implement real safety standards. We save lives. We prove that doing the right thing and making profit aren't mutually exclusive. I returned to Cobalt and Ash that evening, after the lawyers had filed everything, after the press release had been drafted but not yet sent. The private dining room stood empty except for busboys clearing the abandoned celebration. Champagne flutes still held flat bubbles. Zach's graduation cap sat forgotten on table 3. I picked it up, ran my fingers along the tassel. Strange how a piece of fabric could symbolize so much achievement for him. Failure for me, until I'd rewritten the definitions. Ms. Hartwell. The restaurant manager appeared, hesitant. Should we cancel the charges for tonight's reservation? No. Send the bill to North Star Safety. The dinner served its purpose. I walked to the microphone my father had used hours earlier, clicked it on, The feedback squealed, then settled. Testing, I said to the empty room. This is Lena Hartwell, CEO of North Star Safety, formerly the family disappointment, currently the majority owner of everything my parents built. The words felt surreal, but the documents in my briefcase were real. The bank confirmation was real. The 300 jobs I'd just saved were real. My phone buzzed. A text from Tommy Paulson. Heard the news. Every guy on my crew is saying it's about time someone put safety first. Thank you. Then another, from Dr. Ortega, saw the press release draft, proud doesn't begin to cover it. And James Ferry, stock price projections for the merged company are exceptional. Turns out markets like innovation over stagnation. Who knew? I left the restaurant as the sun set over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in shades of construction zone orange. Tomorrow, the announcement would go public. Tomorrow, the industry would learn that Hartwell's failed daughter had just reset the entire game. But tonight, I stood in the parking lot where my parents had planned to give Zach the Tesla. The car still sat there, white and gleaming, keys presumably in Zach's pocket as he drove to Baltimore to start his real life. Martin and Elise had built their empire on the assumption that some children were meant to lead and others to follow. They'd never considered a third option that some were meant to tear down and rebuild, to take what exists and make it better, safer, more human. I pulled out the envelope Vale had delivered, now empty except for one document I'd kept a photo from North Star's first successful deployment. 14 construction workers standing in front of a completed project, all wearing our AR safety gear, all alive and intact. In the corner, someone had written 0 incidents, 60 days, North Star watching over us. That's what this was about, not revenge, though I won't lie and say satisfaction didn't warm my chest. Not even justice, though the scales had certainly balanced. It was about standards, the ones we set, the ones we accept, and the ones we have the courage to change. I thought about my father's words at countless dinners. Lena needs to be realistic about her capabilities. Turns out he was right. I had been unrealistic. I'd assumed I needed their approval, their recognition, their permission to matter. But capabilities aren't defined by the people who refuse to see them. They're defined by results, by lives saved, by industries transformed. I drove home to my apartment modest. Nothing like the Riverton penthouse Zach had just surrendered. Tomorrow, I'd move into the CEO office at Hartwell headquarters, hang North Star's logo next to the family name, and begin the real work of transformation. My phone rang. Zach. Just wanted you to know, he said. Road noise in the background. Mom called. She's crying. Dad's locked himself in his study with a bottle of scotch. And I'm doing 85 on I-94 heading toward my actual future because my sister just set me free. A pause. Thank you, Lena, for seeing what I couldn't say. Drive safe. The world needs biomedical engineers who understand that human lives matter more than profit margins. The world needs CEOs who understand that too. Good thing it's got one now. After we hung up, I sat in my car for a moment longer, looking at the last document in the envelope, the one I hadn't shown anyone. My own graduation certificate from community college, dated 3 years ago. The one my parents hadn't attended. The one where Dr. Ortega had whispered, "You're going to change everything someday." Someday had arrived at 8:30 p.m., in a restaurant full of witnesses. I placed the certificate on my dashboard and drove home. Tomorrow, 300 employees would learn their jobs were safe. Tomorrow, an industry would begin to change. Tomorrow, the standards would be different. Tonight, the failure had become the founder, and that wasn't a dream anymore. It was a documented, notarized, legally binding reality. This isn't revenge, I said to my reflection in the rearview mirror. It's a comprehensive safety system upgrade. The reflection smiled back. We both knew it was both. Thank you for listening to my story. Comment below where you're listening from. Let's connect and share our experiences. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts on what standards in your life need changing. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction, it's transformation.